Good evening and welcome to the April 19, 2021 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Councilmember Neil Harris to lead us in the pledge tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Neil. Next item on our agenda is reflection. I wanted to bring up a very sad situation that happened in the city of Gaithersburg yesterday. We got notice of a fatal collision on Clopper Road in the wee hours yesterday morning. And one of the occupants, the driver of one of the cars is in the hospital and is apparently going to be okay. And we send our best wishes to that driver. The other one who passed away was a city resident. His name was Emil Cosbert. And I know him because he went to school with my daughter at Brown Station. And he was a really, really sweet kid, and just someone who you wanted to be around. I know my daughter really, really liked him, as did the other kids. And I was just texting with Danny Winborn about this, Planning Commissioner Winborn about this today as well, because Danny's son Asa went to school with him as well. We send our fond condolences to his family and to his friends, and just sharing the sorrow of losing a young kid like that. So if we can have a moment of silence, please, and just keep Emil Cosbert's, him and his family on your mind. Thank you all very much. So the next item on our agenda is minutes, approval of minutes. And tonight we have two sets of minutes to approve. The first one is fine as is. The second one will have an amendment that I'll bring up to everybody. But what is the pleasure of the council? We have the March 29th minutes from our work session. Mike.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the minutes from the work session of March 29th.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Lorianne.
Second.
Okay. I will call the roll. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Thank you. Carries unanimously. Next, we have the minutes from the regular meeting on April 5th. And I'd like to ask that whoever makes the motion includes an amendment to include the Planning Commission. Doris just needs to reference that the Planning Commission was at that meeting. So would someone like to move approval? Lorianne, please.
Mayor, I'd like to move the approval
With the, are you okay with the suggested amendment?
with the suggested amendment. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have a second? Ryan?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda, we have appointments. Tonight we have two appointments before you. What is the pleasure of the council? Mike.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move a resolution confirming your appointments to the Community Advisory Committee and the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee. To the Community Advisory Committee, a 2-year term. To Brooke Whitson, her term to expire on April 2023. And the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee, a 2-year term to expire in April 2023. Maritza Suarez Valenti.
Okay, Neil.
I second the motion.
Okay. I will call the roll. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Wu,
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel,
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Carries unanimously. And we will thank Brooke and Maritza when we see them. And I will note, as I often do, that serving on a city committee is an extremely valuable way to both get to know how the city works and to provide, to be involved in the process, because the council members and I take the recommendations that come out of these committees very seriously. Next, we have presentations, and one of our favorite presentations, fourth quarter 2020 Employee Recognition Awards. Tanisha, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. If you give me just a second, for some reason, my Outlook froze on me, and that's where my notes are. We want to make sure I give out the right award tonight.
Take your time.
Oh, don't these things always happen at the most opportune time? Getting closer. Got it restarted. So sorry. Thank you for your patience. So yes, this is one of, I think, my most favorite presentations to make, and you can see our first recipient on the screen here for our fourth quarter 2020 Employee Awards. So we want to start by saying congratulations to Larry Salins and the Novavax team, who are the winners of the 2020 Employee Recognition Award for fourth quarter, which is October 1 through December 31st of last year. The winners were nominated by their peers, and final selections were made by the Employee Recognition Committee, which is comprised of employees from each city department. Also, a special shout out to that committee, because they do a great job and they volunteer their time to make sure that this important process continues to recognize the work of our staff. So Larry Salins is in the Finance and Administration Department. He is the payroll coordinator, and he was nominated for his consistency, responsiveness, and friendly manner. This last year has presented many challenges and generated many payroll-related questions, which Larry handled promptly and proficiently. His expertise and resourcefulness have helped the city get through a difficult year by quickly and skillfully addressing any payroll issues and providing timely, accurate information to staff and supervisors alike. I will add that Larry also did a great job of training the new city manager on our payroll system and our timekeeping system. Moving on to the Novavax team. That team is comprised of staff from 3 departments: Sharon Disk from Economic Development in the city manager's office, Greg Mann, Rob Robinson, Rob Emard in the Planning and Code Administration Department, and Frank Johnson in the city attorney's office. The team's efforts were crucial in safeguarding Novavax's long-term presence in Gaithersburg, one of the biotechnology companies developing life-saving COVID-19 vaccines. Novavax has reached phase 3 clinical trials in the United Kingdom. Their continued presence in Gaithersburg was in question due to an almost immediate need to expand their office to accommodate research and development growth and integrated light manufacturing options, as well as acquire raw land for future expansion. While a vacant facility at 700 Quince Orchard Road and a parcel of land at 14 First Field Road were under consideration, other jurisdictions were seeking to welcome the project, and several competing sites had been identified. The team was able to swiftly resolve zoning issues associated with the Gaithersburg site, negotiate a joint incentive package with the county and state economic development partners, and craft a commitment letter. And in October, Novavax announced that they would be occupying all of the 120,000 square feet at 700 Quince Orchard Road, and an affiliate would be purchasing 14 First Field Road for expansion. The team's dedication and collaborative abilities resulted in retaining a valued business directly supporting an investment of at least $100 million and creating hundreds of professional jobs, all while affirming Gaithersburg's status as the epicenter of the capital region's biotechnology industry. and cementing its reputation as the region's most nimble and efficient jurisdiction in which to conduct business. Congratulations to all of our winners.
Thanks so much, Tanisha. They, I'm sure council members will echo the congratulations from the mayor and council, but I'll just say, in particular, I mean, Larry, I see less because, I'm not a full-time employee. I'm sure Larry's doing yeoman's work. But I did have an opportunity to directly see the Novavax team and to be part of that, on the periphery of that situation. And I know Novavax was being lured by other jurisdictions, and they had to do Superman work. It was quite amazing. So I'm glad to see them honored, and we'll hear from the council on that, I'm sure from the mayor and council. So congratulations to them. And now is the time where we will take public comments for anybody who'd like to comment. Tech team, if you would play the instructional video, please, that would be great. For anybody who'd like to comment, watch the video. It'll tell you how to be heard.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
Great. So we ask that you state your name and address, or if you prefer, your neighborhood for the record. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. If you have more than 3 minutes worth of things to say to us, please send it in writing and we will consider it just like we consider oral testimony. I see 2 hands up at the moment. So tech team, if you could bring up Craig Hostetler, that would be great. And Craig, once you unmute yourself, just state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Craig Hostetler. I'm at 55 Portside Court. And just wanted to sit in on the hearing this evening about some zoning changes, just to see what's going on in the neighborhood.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Did you have any other testimony, or you just wanted to say hello?
Right. I thought we were all supposed to hit that hand up button just to see if it was working. I didn't really have a major comment, but I'm enjoying the meeting so far. It's been a while since I've been able to attend any.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Craig. We're glad you're with us and hope you'll make a habit out of it. Tech team, if we could bring up Carol Johnson, please. Carol, you know the routine. Go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Carol Johnson. I'm a 36-year resident of Gaithersburg. I live in the East Deer Park neighborhood. And I'm calling in tonight about the agenda item under 8, type number A, about the zoning map amendment to rezone 35 and 37 South Summit from.
Carol, can I just have you hold on to that comment, because that's actually a public hearing. So the more appropriate time for you to speak on that would be when we call for comments on that project. Is that okay? Did you have anything else you want to testify on tonight, Carol?
So I was confused. So you've changed the procedure. Now you allow public comments during the public hearings?
Well, that's not a change. That's a regular facet of our public hearings.
Well, it wasn't true when we had the Wawa hearings. We were told that we couldn't no longer speak.
Well, that's incorrect in terms of mayor and council meetings. If we had a public hearing, there was opportunity to speak. I remember tons of testimony on Wawa.
You remember testimony from the Wawa representatives, but not, I believe, who are the people in the audience who were told to sit down and that they'd already had their 3 minutes. But I'll wait.
That's not true. But do you have anything you'd like to testify on tonight, Carol?
I will testify during the public hearing on the zoning. Thank you.
Okay. So do we have anybody else who'd like to speak on a non-public hearing topic? Going once, okay, I see Carol. Well, I thought I saw a hand for a sec, but it seems to be withdrawn. Going once, going twice. Carol, Well, okay. I don't think that person wants to speak. I'm not sure. There's the hand goes up and it goes down. Okay, so let's move forward with our joint public hearing and bring up the planning commission and bring up planning staff to talk about the application to rezone 35 to 37 South Summit. Welcome, everybody. Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Could the tech team bring up packet page 58, please? This is a joint public hearing on zoning map amendment application Z8814 2021. Notice of this public hearing was published in the April 1st and 8th 2021 editions of the Washington Post. The property was posted with signs, notifications were mailed, and notice was given on the city's website. There are currently 15 exhibits in the record. Exhibits 13 through 15 came in after the deadline to submit materials for your packets tonight, but the exhibits are available on the city projects page of the city's website, except for the last exhibit that came in today, and that will be uploaded. Any dispute of an exhibit must be presented prior to the closing of the record. The applicant, Douglas Wagner, has submitted this application on behalf of all property owners for 35 and 37 South Summit Avenue. The application proposes rezoning the two lots from R90, which is medium density residential, to CBD, Central Business District, in accordance with section 24-196 of the city code. And just to quickly orient you to the site, it's highlighted in this aerial image here. It's on the corner of South Summit Avenue and Hutton Street, immediately adjacent to City Hall. Before I introduce the applicant, I'd like to just note what is required for this type of zoning map amendment, just because we don't get these very often. So this application is for a standard method zoning map amendment. And the requirements for standard method map amendments, they're outlined in section 24-196, and they do not include any requirement for any type of site development plan. So unlike the city's CD zone or MXD zone, where actually written into the zone is a requirement to submit some type of development plan, such as a sketch plan for MXD zone, in order to rezone. The CBD zone does not have any type of requirement written in like that. There are specific findings that must be met in order to approve CBD zoning, but this application before you tonight is strictly to change the zone. And any future redevelopment of the site would have to go through the site plan approval process with Planning Commission. And can the tech team please bring up packet page 36? And now I would like to turn it over to the applicant, Doug Wagner.
Good evening, Mayor Ashland, City Council members, city staff members, assembled community members and guests. Appreciate this opportunity to brief you on our zoning map amendment application for 35 and 37 South Summit Avenue. Starting on the next package page, please. Laura gave a nice summary of our application. The application is in reference to the properties immediately adjacent to City Hall on South Summit Avenue and Hutton Avenue. Total property in the application to be affected is approximately 1.66 acres. Both properties include one residential structure and one detached accessory garage. Next slide, please. The application is to amend the zoning map, rezone the area from an R90 medium density residential to the CBD Central District zone. Next slide, please. So why rezone? Currently, our property is non-conforming to the R90 due to being grandfathered into the zone when created. Our primary non-conformities include the addition on the south side of the property and the South Sutton and the accessory garage. And those non-conformities have to do with the setbacks and the uniqueness of the property being a corner lot
which is not typically seen within the rest of R90. Our rezoning application will bring the current structures into compliance with the new zone. Let's see, next slide, please. Additionally, rezoning will permit additional future flexibility for responses and development in the market. While the owners of 35 South Summit and 37 South Summit have no development plans beyond improving the current residential structures, specifically in that non-conforming area on the primary structure on 37 South Summit. The rezone does allow for future market development in compliance with the CBD and the Old Town Master Plan, as far as the Gaithersburg Old Town Gateway Corridor area. Next slide, please. Additionally, the rezoning would encourage land assembly and most desirable use of the land in accordance with the master plan. Basically, it allows, again, it kind of falls into the same argument about the future use of the properties. Again, while myself and the owners of 35 South Summit have no development plans outside of improving the current structures, the rezoning is in complies with the city's master plan and future indications of what the properties could be used for in the Old Town area. Additionally, rezoning and the capital improvements to the properties provides an opportunity to create a more aesthetically pleasing transitional gateway into the Old Town area, enhancing the visual connection to the corridor. Next slide, please. The Gaithersburg 2009 Master Plan land use recommends rezoning the properties to Central Business District. The plan was adopted in December 19th, 2011. Our application is simply a request that our properties be rezoned in compliance with the master plan. Next slide, please. Benefits of rezoning the CBD: flexible response to developments to the market, encourage most desirable land use in accordance with the master plan. In addition, it creates a continuous CBD zone with the City Hall CBD area currently in place. Again, I do want to emphasize that the rezoning does bring the current non-conforming structures into compliance with the new zone. Next slide, please. Our application complies with the purposes and intent of the new zone. The CBD zone fosters revitalization, promotes a mixed use of commercial, office, and residential uses, and encourages development that increases the flexibility of use and conforms with the Old Town Master Plan. Again, we notionally have plans which involve the remodel and expansion of the current residential structures, but we're keeping them as single-family dwellings. This increased capital investment in the properties could later on be redone into commercial uses, not unlike the chiropractor across the street from us on South Summit. Next slide, please. As I said, there are currently no development plans for the property beyond notional aspirations to remodel and modernize the current structures. The properties remain the primary residence of both property owners. And then finally, next slide. Compatibility and harmony with the existing area. Any renovations to existing structures will be compatible and harmonious with the existing and planned land uses in the surrounding areas. As Laura had said, any site plan changes will have to go through the standard site plan change and approval process that the city has in place for land development. So the straight rezoning of the properties does not remove any of the other safeguards to development to ensure that the properties are not used in a compatible and harmonious method. I think that pretty much concludes my presentation. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the joint session, and pending any questions, I'll turn it back over to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. It is rather unusual for us to see a rezoning without some sense of some concept for future development. But that's what we have here. Let me open it up for questions from Council and Planning Commission. Any questions? Mike, please. We'll go to Mike and then John Bauer.
I guess I'll ask Laura, if there is a plan for redevelopment eventually, it will still have to be compatible with the adjacent zone, the R90s?
Yes, any site development plan that Planning Commission approves, one of their findings for approval is that it's compatible with adjacent land uses.
So, which are entirely residential, correct?
It's residential. We're in the Deer Park neighborhood, and then across the street, you have the school and some office uses as well.
Okay, and then what about the section on the across the street towards 355 up to the corner? Is that's currently zoned? What's the current zoning there? And do you know if those property owners are potentially seeking rezoning as well to CBD?
You mean across Hutton Street?
Across Hutton Street towards 355, right?
Right. We have not had interest from those property owners for rezoning. Those are R90.
They're still R90.
Immediately across the street, it's R90, yes.
Right. Okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We'll go to John Bauer.
Thanks, Mayor. Laura, this is for you also, just to be very clear about those, the process moving forward, should this be rezoned and the property owners apply for some development at some level. This goes straight to the planning as a CBD. If it's zoned at CBD, it would go straight to site plan approval or site plan review with the Planning Commission, or would it have the initial review with the council, much like the corridor development zone or an MXD zone?
No, it would just go straight to Planning
Okay.
Commission.
Thanks, that's all I had.
Fair point. Any other questions? Before we go to before we go to the public. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So this is the time the mayor and council and planning commission like to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to comment on this. I see one hand up. We use the same, I see two hands up. We use the same Zoom raise hand function to designate if you'd like to speak. And tech team, if you could bring up Carol Johnson, please. Carol can get her testimony in. Carol, just state your name and address or neighborhood, go right ahead.
Okay, hey, Carol Johnson, East Deer Park. Just a note, Mayor, my friend Carol Vallis was the one who was trying to raise her hand during the public comment. And I don't know what happened, but she's still on and she would like to speak if that's at all possible. So on this zoning thing, I'm very concerned because as we just heard, if it goes to CBD, then it can go to, as I understand what was just said, it could go to site plan without any further or much review. And I feel like that we need to preserve the R90 neighborhood character and that we don't need any commercial type development, which would be allowed in the CBD case along Summit Avenue, because it would be harmful to the neighborhood and harmful to traffic patterns and just a general loss of public interest and the livelihood and the life that we have as East Deer Park residents. I object to saying that, or the implication that if it still has to be compatible with R90 if it were to be developed, because that was the argument made for the Wawa. It's adjacent to homes that are R90, and they said it was compatible, and now we're going to have a service station. So I don't believe that that's a good thought pattern there. What else? I think that's pretty much it. I guess I would comment, you know, back in the day, I wanted to make a 2-car garage and I couldn't because I'm a corner lot and you have to be 30 feet on the corner side, not just the front yard side. The carport is actually already over the property, the 30-foot setback. And so I was told that I would never be allowed to expand my garage, which is fine. But I guess now looking back on it, if I had rezoned, then, you know, asked for CBD, then I could do whatever I want, like get up to 10 feet. So I'm kind of curious as to what these owners are planning to do. And I feel kind of nervous that we don't know anything about what their plans are. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And after, I will be glad to call on Carol Vallis when we get all the testimonies on this project, so she gets a chance to testify. Thanks for letting me know. Tech team, if you could bring up Loretta Rivers, please. Loretta, just state your name, address, or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Loretta Rivers. I'm a resident of East Deer Park neighborhood, and I want to echo many of Carol's comments. I'm very nervous about essentially writing a blank check to any commercial development. The other thing is, if you look at the layout of this property, it is well into, particularly the garage area of the corner lot, is well into the Easter Park neighborhood. And there's been so much encroachment into this residential area that I'm just concerned that this is creep. And I know at one time the plan was to look at the zoning and how it was adjacent to residential neighborhoods. And I don't know where that is in the process, but I think it maybe ought to be stepped up because this is yet another project that is well into a residential neighborhood. Thanks so much. That was it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other testimony on the application here? Okay, Craig Hostetler, please, tech team. Craig, same deal as before. State your name, address, or neighborhood, and go ahead.
Craig Hostetler, Audubon Square. Thank you very much. I'm just curious, and maybe I should have done more homework ahead of time, but is Mr. Wagner one of the owners of the two properties? And their owner, why weren't they sort of part of the presentation? And then I thought I heard that the property was 1.66 acres, and I thought on the screen it showed, I thought 0.66, unless the one got cut off on my screen. And then as one of the previous speakers said about the changing process in the future, could someone briefly describe me what the difference between the planning committee, zoning board, or planning commission, what would be the difference in the changes once it gets designated CBD as opposed to what it currently is?
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Do we have any other, anyone else who'd like to testify on this matter? I'll let the applicant have a chance to respond to all this stuff momentarily. Not seeing any. Okay, tech team, I want to give Carol Vallis a chance to testify because apparently she was trying. I kept seeing her hand come up and then be retracted before, so I wasn't sure. But tech team, if there's a way you could bring up Carol Vallis and give her a chance. Carol, if you just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Hi, I apologize for the quirkiness. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. And I am a resident of Quince Orchard Park. My husband and I have lived in Quince Orchard Park for 21 years and enjoyed living in here, still enjoy it. It was a wonderful place to raise our two sons. However, within the last 2 weeks, we have started receiving parking tickets in a place where we have parked for 21 years. We live next to a very quiet nook, and for some reason, we're now receiving parking tickets, $60 a pop, and right now we are totaling $180 of parking tickets. And I understand that it's due to the ordinance of 0-4-14, the stopping, standing, and parking code. And apparently there is a bullet item that if you were to live near a crosswalk, which we do, you are not permitted to park within 20 feet of it. And if I drew a circumference of 20 feet in Quince Orchard Park, we would go across the street into the sidewalks. So I am wondering or requesting if we can have some type of another amendment to the ordinance, because it looks like there was already an amendment to this. So I can continue to park in front of my house where we've parked for 21 years. As you know, we're still living through this pandemic, And I have two sons, as I mentioned. And during this time, we're all working and schooling from home. So all four of us are drivers. And I welcome all of you to come in and view Quince Orchard Park's parking situation. We've seemed to be very respectful in being able to handle it very diplomatically over the years. But I'm asking for someone to help us in this situation. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Carol. So I'm going to put that on the table until we're done with our public hearing, but then I'll bring it up with Tanisha again. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other hands. Let me go back to the applicant and a few questions for you, and then Laura, I'll give you one question. Follow-ups from comments from the public. Mr. Wagner, first, what's your affiliation with this application?
I am one of the four owners of the properties. So it's my wife and I own 37 South Summit, and my father and mother own 35 South Summit.
Got it. Okay. Is the correct area 0.66 acres or 1.66?
The correct area is 0.66 acres.
0.66. Okay. Laura, this is going to be for you, the next two. So it seems that there's some concern, and it's similar to what Planning Commissioner Bauer brought up about sort of the by right nature of the CBD zone. What do you say? What can you say about the process to people who have expressed concern here?
So it's still a public process. There will be the opportunity for folks to submit comments and review any proposed development on the property. It goes before City Planning Commission for approval. And as I mentioned earlier, there are findings required for approving site development plans. A couple of them that I can tell you off the top of my head. One of them is that it's compatible with adjacent uses, and other ones that it's not going to be a detriment to the public welfare. And then I will just mention, because I know there was a question, how is it different from the process now? So if it remained R90, it would be the same approval process. It would just go before the City Planning Commission for approval.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Bauer.
Thank you. And I just want to amplify one point that Laura made. I mean, she described it perfectly, but I want to amplify one point, and that is when it does become before the Planning Commission, it's a public process. And during that process, the public is invited and welcome to speak for or against or on any other points of the application. So it's very much a public process and paced in a way that concerned neighbors have an opportunity to speak about it in public at our meeting or submit written comments or both. So there is an opportunity for anyone concerned to voice those concerns.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments on this application? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Maybe we should go to staff recommend. Oh, I see Phil. Phil, go right ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Last late-breaking question for Laura. Given the age of some of the properties, do either of them are either of them of an age that significant modification or demolition would trigger a historic HDC review?
I believe since they're over 50 years old, demolition would require HDC review, but they're not historically designated properties.
Correct, but say if somebody decided, if the applicant were to decide to come in and propose a plan that bulldozed the houses and put up an office building, there would, in addition to Planning Commission review, there would be the opportunity for historic designation and historic review as well.
Yes, the HDC would have to review the demolition.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, so I guess we should move then to staff recommendations. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission hold their record open until 5 p.m. on Friday, May 21st, 2021. That's 32 days, with anticipated recommendation on June 2nd, 2021. Is there a motion from the commission, please? Lloyd?
Second.
Who
Oh, I'm
moved?
sorry. I so move.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd.
And I will second.
Thank you, Phil, and I will do the roll call vote. You know how that goes. Commissioner Kaufman,
Aye.
Commissioner Wessel,
Aye.
Commissioner Cantrell,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye as well. Thank you all. That passed unanimously. Mr. Mayor, back to you.
Thank you, John. I really like that, Lloyd. Go right to the second. I like that. Staff recommendation for mayor and council is that we hold our record open until 5 p.m. on Friday, June 11th, with anticipated policy discussion on July 6th. I saw Rob Wu's hand. Go ahead, Rob.
I'll second.
Well done. Okay.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do we have a second? Neil.
I second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Okay, carries 5-0. So our record will be open until 5 p.m. Friday, June 11th. Thank you all. We will see you all back soon. Next item on our agenda. Oh, before we go to the next item, I wanted to circle back to public comment. And Tanisha, I wanted to give you a chance, and not to put you on the spot, because we can ask Carol Vallis to just contact you or contact anybody through us. But did you want to respond at all to this parking ticket comment?
Thanks, Mayor. I can mention that we certainly can follow up with Ms. Vallis on this issue. The question about changing or amending the ordinance, of course, would be a policy discussion, but I would like to say that our ordinance tracks the state law when it comes to parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk. So our ordinance essentially mirrors state law, and that's why it is written as so. But we're happy to follow up with Ms. Vallis.
Thank you very much, Tanisha. Next on our agenda, let me just get down to it, is public hearings. Oh, our budget ordinance. Nothing super important, just our budget ordinance. Tanisha, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could have tech team to pull up the presentation. All right, thank you. So good evening. Tonight, I am pleased to present a brief summary of the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. The purpose of tonight's overview is to provide some general context for the proposed budget as all of you, along with the community, review the budget in detail and formulate your feedback and/or questions. We will go into more detail at the work sessions next week. As a reminder, the proposed budget is available on the city's website, and you all should have received an electronic version for your review on April 6th. Next slide. So we're going to start with a quick review of the city's budget process. We'll then take a look at the changes that were made to the budget since introduction in March, along with a quick synopsis of the revenues and expenses, budget impacts anticipated between now and final adoption in June, as well as a quick look at the capital improvement plan and Stormwater Fund. We'll then wrap up with an overview of next steps. If you have questions along the way, please unmute and ask, or you can wait until the end to ask, because as you know, I can't see you while we're doing the presentation. Next slide. So the budget process, just quickly mapped out. We start preparations. Actually, this says December to February. The Parks and Recreation budget process actually begins, I think, in October, as early as October. So we work on this for several months with department budget prep. We also move into the strategic planning process, which of course culminates in the mayor and city council retreat that's held at the end of February, which was held this year. In March, the budget ordinance is introduced. So we'll talk a little bit about what was introduced and how it differs from what is being proposed and this in the city manager's proposed budget that we'll review quickly tonight and in more detail next week. And then in April and May, we have our public hearing where we are today and our budget work sessions, which will occur next week. And then the budget is adopted in June and it becomes effective July 1. Next slide. So the introduced budget. The budget was introduced on March 15th. The initial budget was about 73 million and represented an increase over the current year's budget of 5.5%, or about 3.8 million more than the current year. This level of funding resulted in an $8.2 million deficit that would have needed to be filled by reappropriating monies from the city's reserve in order to balance the budget. This initial pass is what I call a fully loaded budget. And as I mentioned during the March 15th presentation, we expected additional information and refinement in the month between then and now. That leads us to the proposed budget. Next slide. So the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget is $70 million, which is just 1.1% over the current year's budget, or about 770,000 more than last year. We are proposing to budget the use of about 980,000 in reappropriated reserve funds versus the nearly 9 million included in the introduced budget and the 2.6 million that's budgeted in this current fiscal year. It is important to note that the current year budget was reduced during the budget process last year to bring it more in line with projected revenue losses due to COVID-19. If we think about what was known in April of 2020 versus what's known today about COVID-19, we can all agree that most projections back then were bound to be off base. In our case, the impacts were more severe than anticipated and have endured much longer than any of us could have guessed at this time a year ago. So the 1.1% increase is definitely a modest year-over-year increase, considering we are comparing the proposed budget to a budget that did not track our normal growth pattern. And the modest increase also reflects our conservative approach to this next fiscal year, and the financial impacts from the pandemic continue, and we continue to operate in an uncertain financial environment. Next slide. So summary of changes. This is looking at the difference between the introduced and the proposed budgets, less about $3 million. And the chart shows this comparison, and you can see right away that the vast majority of that $3 million reduction is attributed to the reduced amount of transfer to the capital improvement plan, with the remainder coming from a reduction of about $886,000 in the operating budget. Both the general fund and the capital improvement fund are being rescued this year by a one-time transfer from the Stormwater Fund, as was discussed at the March 22nd Mayor and Council work session on the stormwater rates. So we'll talk a little more about that. Let's go to the next slide. So this is looking at a breakdown of revenues we are projecting for the proposed budget. The percentages track our trends closely, with the exception of the transfers in, which is new this year. Rarely does the general fund get revenue from other funds. It's usually the other way around. So you might see that, notice the 6% in transfers in is a result of the one-time transfer from the Stormwater Fund to the general fund. This transfer repays a subsidy from the general fund to the Stormwater Fund that was used to aid in reducing the rate needed for stormwater management as the city sought to raise funds back in 2014 to meet new anticipated state requirements. Following the recent intensive study to review ongoing funding needs, it was concluded that the Stormwater Fund was in good position to continue to meet the known current and near-term future environmental mandates, and the subsidy could thus be returned to the general fund. The Stormwater Fund was also able to return funds to the Capital Improvement Fund, which provided additional relief to the general fund. If not for these transfers, the city would be facing a substantial deficit requiring the use of reserves or substantive cuts to the capital budget to achieve balance. You'll also note that our bread and butter revenue sources, local taxes, which are property taxes, and county grants and shared taxes, which is income tax, those are still trending our normal percentage of what we might expect in our budget revenues. Next slide, please. This is just a quick illustration of the pandemic's impact on our revenue sources. You will note that the top half of the slide is showing some of the most significantly impacted revenue sources, and the lower half of the slide is showing that the other revenue sources are mostly flat, with a few notable exceptions, with income tax and corporate personal property that have some increases. The best news on this slide is that our main sources of revenue that I mentioned before, property and income taxes, are either stable or slightly increasing. We'll share more details about the revenue forecast at next week's meeting, but the spoiler is that we anticipate these revenue sources to rebound in the second half of the fiscal year, so in the year 2022, which gives us some confidence with respect to some of the decisions we've made on the expenditure side of the equation. Next slide. So this chart is showing our proposed expenditures, which also closely track our normal trend, with the exception of transfers, which is normally slightly larger. You will note that personnel costs make up the greatest majority of our spending, which is also expected and normal. Next slide. So this is showing our expenditures by department. Here you can see, I wanted to highlight that the second largest department on this slide is non-departmental at 19%, which of course isn't a department at all. This is where the large transfers to the CIP, asset replacement, OPEB liability, and housing funds, along with smaller expenditures that are of a citywide nature and don't really fall into one department, they're categorized in non-departmental. In the budget book, you will typically see, and it's in there now this way, the transfers show as a part of the finance and administration department's budget. I pulled out the transfers tonight and put them in non-departmental to show two things. One, a truer representation of the finance and administration department's budget, as well as the impact of the transfers as they relate to other departmental spending. So you can see that our transfers out obviously rank second when we look at our expenditures by department. So a very significant part of our overall budget. Next slide, please. And this is just a breakdown of those transfers. So these are our normal transfers. You do see a transfer here of sorry about that, 170,000 to the Stormwater Fund. That is a expected normal transfer that we'll continue to make to the Stormwater Fund. It will cover any hardship funding that we provide to residents. So that is the amount of that transfer. It used to be much larger, but as we just mentioned, we no longer need to subsidize that fund. It's actually the other way around now. OPEB trust at 3.4 million is an increase over the last year. Housing fund is the same amount that we've transferred for several years. Asset replacement fund is a larger amount this year. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then the capital funds at 5 million is represent a smaller amount than we normally would transfer to the capital fund. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the proposed FY22 budget is increasing by 1.1% over the current year's budget. We cover this in more detail next week, but in summary, this increase is driven by large maintenance projects and added dollars to cover the additional maintenance needs of the new building at 16 South Summit. The increase also covers the additional funds needed to implement the new hybrid municipal election process. And there are dollars included to cover the addition of 3 new positions, as well as a general wage increase of 2.5%, which includes COLA, and a planned increase in our transfer to the OPEB liability trust fund and catch-up funding for the future replacement of city assets. So the asset replacement fund was one of the cuts made in this current year's budget in order to brace ourselves for the financial impact of COVID-19. We reduced the transfer to that fund. This year, I'm proposing we increase the transfer and actually add additional amount to try to make up for the cut we sustained in this current year. So I want to point out that the proposed reappropriation amount for the proposed year, FY22, it covers this increase in funding for asset replacement fund, and it also covers contingency funding. So it does not at all need to or does subsidize any operations. So the reappropriation is being used just for an investment in our assets and any contingency that might be needed. I think that's an important point to make. Next slide, please. So to summarize this piece, despite the challenging economic environment caused by the virus, we've produced a proposed FY22 budget that supports our core programs and services that will be needed to ensure our resilience and recovery for the next fiscal year and beyond. Thanks to our strong financial position, we're able to do this without a property tax increase, and the rate will remain as it has been for the last more than 40 years. And we continue to enjoy one of the lowest property tax rates in the state of Maryland. FY22 budget also reflects the priorities of the mayor and city council as set forth in the strategic plan, as well as insight from Gaithersburg's residents acquired through the virtual budget forum and survey. And the budget allows us to continue to strengthen our commitment to our guiding principles of customer focus, open communication, creativity, fiscal responsibility, cooperation, commitment to excellence, and continuous improvement. Next slide. Now, some potential impacts. We do expect the budget to continue to change between now and when we get to final adoption. The areas of impact I've tried to summarize here. Obviously, the pandemic is going to continue to be a factor and create some unknown for us in the fiscal environment. So while, of course, the vaccine is giving us much needed hope that better days ahead, we are cautiously optimistic that we'll get back to those activities that we miss and enjoy, which are activities that also generate revenue for the city. But we're taking a very conservative approach to our budgeting for next year so that we can pivot if necessary. So that can be an impact on both the revenue and expense side of the equation. The American Rescue Act is providing funding to all cities across the country. We are still awaiting final allocations and the rules and regulations that will be associated with this funding. We expect that information any day now, but we likely won't have it before our work session next week. So we'll continue to monitor this very closely, and I'll make sure that I point out any changes to the budget that occur as a result. We expect that those dollars to hit in this current fiscal year, so it may not have as much impact for the proposed 22 budget, but we'll certainly outline those details for you. And then the last bullet on the revenue side is also a pandemic issue that we've experienced in FY20 and this current fiscal year, and that there are delayed collections. So as the state, for example, is delaying, and the federal government delaying income tax filing, that could have a delay on collections. Remote work has a delay on collections, just the normal processes that have been delayed. So that can have an impact. We will receive it, just may not receive it when we expect to receive it. So we'll continue to monitor that aspect. And on the expense side, an open question is whether we want to restore the full estimated transfer to the asset replacement fund as proposed. As I mentioned, the reappropriation amount really covers these additional funds as well as some contingency funds. So if we wanted to zero out our reappropriation, we could do so by pulling back some of that additional investment in the asset replacement fund. I don't recommend this at this time, but we are still evaluating that, and that can be a change that gets presented. Next slide. So quickly, I just have 2 more slides and I'll wrap up. The capital improvement plan that's proposed, we'll go into detail with that next week. Deputy City Manager Dennis Inslinger will lead that presentation. The FY22 total CIP is 13 million, and there's about 1.7 million in new projects, 12 new projects. Some of them listed out here. There's also some technology enhancements in public art, but for the most part, we're taking a very conservative approach in the CIP. Next slide. And then the Stormwater Fund, you'll hear again more detail next week. For next year, it is proposed at 14 million, most of which you can see 56% are the one-time transfers that won't happen to that magnitude in future years. So that is a good chunk of their budget that we have evaluated can be sustained. And then you can see the projects that Stormwater Fund will invest in take up the next amount, followed by operating expenses and personnel. So you'll get all those details next week, or you can review them now, but we'll cover them with you next week. So next slide, please. So what's coming, what happens next? Public comment is invited and encouraged. You can email us at cityhall@gaithersburgmd.gov. You can call us. You can send a letter in the mail. The budget work sessions are scheduled for next Monday and Tuesday. We know that this is dense information, and so we've broken it out into 2 days. We're hoping still to have 2 short evenings for you, but I think it might be more digestible if we cover it over 2 nights instead of 1. And then the budget adoption is scheduled for Monday, June 7th. We'll continue to highlight major changes to the proposed budget on our city's website, so you can follow along there. And at this time, I can take any questions that you all have.
Tanisha, thanks for the presentation. I just want to follow up on one point to the council members. Make sure you have both Monday and Tuesday marked off next week, because we are looking to have 2 work sessions, one on Monday night, one on Tuesday night. With that, I saw Neil's hand. Neil, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the great presentation, Tanisha, and I'm sure for the whole city staff that worked on this budget and put it together. I haven't made my way entirely through the mammoth budget book yet, but I'm getting there, and I'm sure we'll have some interesting discussion next week. I had a few quick questions, and some specific and some more general. First of all, on the slide that showed the potential pluses and minuses that you might expect on packet page 100, why do you have the American Rescue Act funding as a potential expense as well as a potential revenue? I don't think any of the money from that is included in the budget at this point, right?
Correct. So we do anticipate those dollars to hit in this current fiscal year. And the reason that it's on both sides of the equation is because if the revenue becomes available, then the expenditures would be made as well.
Right. I was concerned that there might be some strings that we have to spend money on certain things, but I don't think that's what I'm hearing.
Well, there will be strings. We just don't know what they are. Just we have a general outline, and everyone's waiting anxiously for Treasury to make the final rules.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the discussion of the large deficit that is made up by pulling money out of the Capital Improvements Fund, I believe that the majority of that is due to the major capital projects that we have going on. Is that correct? The police station and the new park?
You mean that the funding that's included in the CIP? So we've reduced the overall CIP this year, and then we also reduced the transfer to it because the Stormwater Fund is helping.
No, I understand, but the reason for the reappropriation is because we have expenses against the capital projects this year.
Yeah, I would say over time, especially in fiscal year 20 and this current year, though the major project there, of course, is 16 South Summit, the police station.
And
But
the-
in the next fiscal year, there's not a whole lot of impact left. We'll be winding the project down.
But we have the former Consumer Product Safety Commission site park. It's also a pretty significant project, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. One last general question. In terms of putting this budget together, how much was the input from the survey that was done this past year and that is done every year? How much of an input of influence does that survey of the general public's opinions on our city budget have in your decision making? Is there anything particular that you could point to that's reflective of the public input?
So I have both Janice and Nate here. They can jump in, but I'd say that we use that as one of many tools to look for alignment. And I think that we did find, alignment. Nate, does anything jump out specific to you that we can point to? And there was the conflicting information we received on parks, but we can tell, and you will see from the CIP that we are continuing our investment for parks and recreation, just as an example. Anything else you want to add, Nate?
I think that really covers it. A lot of it is, the city residents are very much interested in park projects right now, where it's something that they can go out and do on their own. And investing in these new parks like Pleasant View and Discovery Park last year is very much in line with what the people in the survey were requesting. Because right now we've been pulling back on programming while the pandemic has been ongoing. I think for next year we're kind of looking at restoring some of that, but the plan is kind of looking at the measures that we've had to take during the pandemic, kind of becoming a little less stringent as things go on and things return to normal. Does that answer your question at all?
It does.
Okay.
And just out of curiosity, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I want to check. And there's a pie chart that shows the proposed budget expense categories on page 95, personnel services, operating, transfers, and so forth. Which bucket does OPEB go into? Is it a personnel service? Is it transfer?
It's in the transfer bucket.
Okay, and I think we'll talk about that more in next week, but that number has been creeping up over the years, and I'd be curious as to what your thoughts are about whether that's controllable in the future. I know that's an important benefit for our employees, but it's getting to be a pretty big number in our budget.
Yeah, we can definitely dive into more detail on that next week. I would say that the transfer that we have proposed for this next fiscal year is a planned increase. And in fact, we did not, correct me if I'm wrong, Janice and Nate, we did not do the planned increase in this current fiscal year. That was also one of the pandemic cuts, I think, that was made.
We reduced the transfer by 100,000 from the planned increase last year.
Yeah.
And then we did the amount of the planned increase for this year based on what the previous plan was. So we only did $100,000 increase last year, and then we went back to a $200,000 increase this year.
And there's a reevaluation that takes a look at our liability and reevaluates that. And we believe the schedule will be next year for the next reevaluation. But yeah, we can definitely talk more about that next week.
All right, thank you very much. That's all my input for now.
Thanks, Neil. Any other questions before we go to the public? Not seeing any. Okay. Well, this is a public hearing, and I want to open it up for anybody in the public who'd like to comment on the proposed budget. Same deal as with the other speaking opportunities. If you'd like to speak, use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will call on you. Going once, going twice. So far, I do not see any hands going up. All right, I guess we don't have any speakers on the budget tonight. So before we go to the record, obviously we are going to take a really deep dive into the budget next Monday and Tuesday. Does anybody have any further questions or comments before we get to our record opening and closing situation here? Not seeing any. Okay. Well, Mike.
I just wanted to echo Neil's comments about the job that Tanisha and her team have done on this budget. I think perhaps one of the reasons we don't have a lot of questions is because of the way the budget has been presented and the details that have been provided for the public to look at and evaluate. I think under the circumstances, some people are probably surprised at the budget we've been able to construct, given that we don't, there's some things we just don't know, given changes in revenue and changes in expenditures, et cetera, due to the pandemic. It will be interesting to see how much of the American Rescue Plan Act funds that we get will carry over into the next year budget in terms of the impact on that. What I understand is that we can use it for almost anything. We can use those funds for almost anything except to pay for a tax cut to our residents and businesses. So, which is a good thing because, but we should be able to find useful ways to, or the most expedient ways to use that money to improve our situation. So anyway, those are just comments and observations I wanted to make.
Tanisha, go ahead.
I just, thank you for that, Mike. It reminded me, I misspoke. The ARPA dollars will be in 2 tranches. So we will receive money in this current fiscal year. And then a year from now, we would receive additional, the second half of whatever our allocation is going to be. And while we do believe the legislation is written that it should be definitely less strings attached than the CARES Act funding that came out. There's a lot of, I think, trepidation by cities waiting to hear what Treasury's interpretation of the law is, because that's actually what we'll be bound to. So we're going to continue to monitor that. We do have revenue loss, as I mentioned, in this current year, which the dollars can be used to stem any losses that we have in this year and any projected for next. So that's helpful for us. And again, gives me some confidence that the expense decisions we're making that will have, continual impact that we believe will be rebound in time to cover those ongoing expenses. So thank you for that. And thank you so much to Janice and Nate for all of their help through this process. They've been invaluable. And Tom and everyone else. It's been an all hands effort. So I'm very grateful for all the support.
Great job, everybody.
Well, congratulations on your first budget. I think that's important. So,
well, we're not done with it yet.
Well, I'm for getting us to this point. Congratulations.
Okay. I agree. Congratulations for getting us to this point. We're going to see if there's more congratulations coming later. Lynn, do we need, this is worded a little differently from usual. Do we need a record closing motion here? Or have we already done that? Because it's just worded a little differently on this sheet.
Yeah, there should be a motion to close the record.
Okay, staff recommends we keep the record open on the budget until 5 p.m. on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. What is the pleasure of the council? I see Neil's hand. Go ahead, Neil.
So moved.
Okay, Ryan.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I'll call the roll. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Nate and Janice, we echo the thanks from Tanisha. Congratulations getting this far, and and we look forward to. I'm sure we're going to see you guys next week. Next, we have from the mayor and city council, and tonight we're starting with Councilmember Lori Ann Sales.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a few updates. I want to also congratulate our fourth quarter employees who were recognized earlier this evening for their important contributions during the pandemic. The 90-day legislative session ended last Monday. And I believe we're going to be receiving a debrief from our District 17 delegation members at an upcoming session. A big win for broadband in the midst of relying on technology to stay connected while learning and teleworking or otherwise. The MML Montgomery County chapter met with the county council members last week for our annual meet and confer meeting. We discussed highway user revenue fees, among other hot topics like the pandemic response, namely, and vaccination distributions, and some other items. And the meeting was recorded by the county council, so you can probably view it on their website. I also attended the National League of Cities. We had our board of directors meeting to finalize our strategic plan for the upcoming year with the allocation of the American Rescue Plan. That funding, so many municipalities are still in the weeds about how that money is going to be allocated, what it's going to be allocated towards. So these are important meetings. We also joined the Environmental Protection Agency. We were invited to meet with the administrator, Michael Reagan, to discuss environmental justice and equity. We also were joined today by the recently confirmed Department of Transportation Deputy Secretary, Polly Trottenberg. We discussed her goals in her new role in the transportation aspects of the American Jobs Plan. We were also joined by Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. He's a former Boston mayor and NLC member, to talk about the funding priorities in the American Job Rescue Plan as well. So I want to thank all of our community partners and nonprofits involved in collaborating with the county's food council to get much needed resources and food out to the community. I joined the Montgomery County Muslim Foundation and the Islamic Center of Maryland for their food distributions, and was honored to receive a certificate of appreciation from the Montgomery County Muslim Foundation for Women's History Month. I couldn't attend in March because of the weather, and they surprised me at the event last week. The Interfaith Works held a fundraiser last week, supporting their work to help people living in our county who are homeless or are living in poverty. So thank you to Interfaith Works for all the great work they're doing to house people during this unprecedented time when the state legislature was unable to address evictions that are potentially on the rise this summer when the moratorium ends. The book festival is coming up next month, and I'm sure the mayor will share some highlights. I will be introducing a few authors, so please be on the lookout. It's going to be a month-long virtual celebration, and so we had a virtual celebration last year, so I think we've got it down pat this year. The Pleasant View Historical Foundation hosted their fundraiser, Too Precious to Lose, to help with the restoration of the property along Darnestown. Metropolitan Washington Council of Government, in honor of Earth Month, created a video with leaders from Maryland, DC, and Virginia, so you can see that on social media, and hope everyone is enjoying Earth Month and looking at all of the activities that we have planned in the city. If you haven't yet, we have a really cool digital interactive bingo card. You can download it and look for something. There's about 2 weeks left for Earth Month. So if you haven't found anything to do yet to celebrate, please definitely check out all the activities that were planned. And that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lorianne. We will move on to Councilmember Rob Wu.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have an announcement and my internet has died. Okay. Notice the general public is hereby given that the City of Gaithersburg Mayor and City Council will conduct a budget work session on Monday, April 26th.
Wait, Rob. That's my announcement. I want you to do the after closed executive session announcement.
You just said find the announcement. And do it.
No. You're good. It's like the page before that.
Got it.
Is the one. Go ahead.
After closed executive session, a closed meeting was held virtually by the mayor and city council on Monday, April 12, 2021, at approximately 9:25 p.m. pursuant to a motion adopted unanimously. The meeting was proposed to be closed pursuant to the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, section 3-305B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. The topic discussed was the process for investigating police action. Present at the meeting were Mayor Ashman, council members Harris, Sales, Sesma, Spiegel, and Wu. Staff present was City Manager Briley, City Attorney Board, and Police Chief Shroka. Also present was John McCarthy, Montgomery County State's Attorney. Upon conclusion of the discussion, the closed meeting was adjourned at approximately 10:19 p.m. It's exhausting. That's all I've got. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Rob. We'll go to Ryan.
How can I possibly follow that? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. For all of our friends and neighbors who are observing Ramadan, which started a week ago, I want to wish you all a Ramadan Kareem and hope it's a good and meaningful observance over the course of the next few weeks. Last Tuesday, I was honored to provide welcoming remarks to the inaugural Gaithersburg Sustainability Summit for our own local homeowners associations and civic associations. This is a program organized by our city staff with a grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust and in coordination with the statewide Sustainable Maryland Certified organization, which is an initiative of the Environmental Finance Center at the University of Maryland. And those of us involved with the Maryland Municipal League might be familiar with Sustainable Maryland. And the city has actually been a Sustainable Maryland certified city for a number of years through their program. But this was the first time they sort of took the model of encouraging communities to be more active in arranging programs for environmental awareness and recognizing achievements by communities in that area, and took it to the HOA and civic association level. And we had a lot of people from the city of Gaithersburg, a lot of activists within their communities who attended the virtual summit last Tuesday. And I just want to thank everybody who was involved. It was one of the great signature programs of our Green Month and Earth Month activities and our calendar that Lorianne mentioned earlier. And hopefully it will encourage many neighborhoods to create or grow green teams. And that's really what the model is designed to promote, is these teams of volunteers who can organize their communities with events, programs, and recognitions. I also want to add my congratulations to our fourth quarter employee and employee team award recipients. Thanks for your great work, which was well recognized earlier by our city manager. And in a similar vein, I just want to acknowledge that on Wednesday this week is Administrative Professionals Day. A number of us have day jobs where we work in offices or businesses where we will be hopefully thanking and appreciating our administrative professionals there. But I think it's also important that as the leaders of the city, we acknowledge and appreciate the administrative professionals who work for city government as well. So I just want to say thanks to all of them and for all the support that they provide to make us look good. We really do appreciate it. And then finally, I wanted to acknowledge our friend and State Senator Cheryl Kagan. She is receiving a prestigious award called the Bookbinder Award from the American Jewish Committee, which is one of the most well-established and well-respected American Jewish advocacy organizations, advocating for human rights and against anti-Semitism. And they have named her the Bookbinder Award recipient for 2021, I guess, in the DC chapter, and she will be recognized during a virtual program on Sunday. So we just want to congratulate her and wish her well. And that's all I've got this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. We will move on to Neil.
Thank you, Mayor. And as usual, I will try to keep it brief. My congratulations also to the 2020 fourth quarter employee, 2021 fourth quarter employees, whatever quarter that was. I'm sorry, I've lost track of what year it is, thanks to COVID. In particular, I'm very impressed with the work that the Novavax team did, which is obviously very visible to the public. And I'd also just like to reiterate for the public that the city really held its ground on that property. Long ago, it was proposed to make that a self-storage building, then a car dealer, and then leave the building empty and build townhouses around it, but leave an empty office building. And none of those were acceptable. And those were all hard decisions to make. And now it's the headquarters of a pharmaceutical company that will bring another 1,000 high-paying, excellent jobs to the city. So sometimes you have to be stubborn and take your time and be patient, but good things happen if you're strategic about decision making. And I think the city did a great job. And that goes back to long before many of us were part of this organization. I participated in the Maryland Municipal League chapter meeting last week. Interesting conversation with the county councilman. Many subjects were discussed, including the fact that the county took away the revenue share for tax duplication for the services that the city provides, that the county collects tax money for, that is supposed to provide to the city, but took away during a budget crunch 10 years ago or so and hasn't restored since. Ongoing discussions every year to the point where I've become very skeptical that the situation will ever be rectified, but I hope that the county council and the county executive will see their way clear to do the right thing, because it's our money, it's not their money, but they get it first, so they haven't let it slip through their fingers. I attended the Montgomery for All meeting that's sponsored by the Coalition for Smarter Growth with County Councilman Hans Riemer, who spoke at length about many issues, including land use and transportation. And I had a great briefing last week by the county planning group for the Mid-County to discuss the Corridor Forward program that really has a great impact on the transportation plans for the Mid-County, including BRT and the CCT project and others. So we had a great dialogue, a great chance to really dig in to find out what they had in mind and what the plan is like going forward. This is all part of the new general plan that the county has put together to update the original master plan of this region that was put together back in the 60s. So that information is available on their website. I encourage those of you who are interested in transportation in our region to take a look, and I'm sure there will be more coming. And finally, on transportation, the Transportation Planning Board's monthly meeting is this Wednesday, and I will bring back a report for whatever has transpired. One of the things that I know will be discussed is what may be coming in terms of regional strategies for transportation and the infrastructure bill that may or may not pass Congress in the next few months. We need to put our requests in not only individually, I know the county and the state have put in their requests, as have the other organizations in the region, but hopefully the region will get together and see if there are any strategically important projects or programs that can be federally funded that wouldn't be possible without a giant slug of money. So stay tuned for more information. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. We will go to Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll echo the compliments and recognition that my colleagues have already identified. A lot of things have happened in the last couple of weeks. I think probably the most frustrating event was the meeting with the county council and the MML chapter last week. These are certainly issues that we've been working on since I was elected in 2005, and it hasn't improved and it hasn't gotten better. So we're hoping to work through that in the next year or so to make sure that the residents, the taxpayers of Gaithersburg get the money back that we are owed by the county. It is our money, and every municipality, municipal government in Montgomery County has the same issues that, you know, it's the money that belongs to our residents, then paid in taxes from our residents, and we should have an opportunity to receive that money and put it to good use within the city. So again, I want to congratulate the fourth quarter employee team and the Novavax team, and also Larry Salins for their hard work and their recognition. Glad that Neil pointed out what's going on with Novavax. It's important to remember that this is now going to be the global headquarters for Novavax, and over $1 billion in investment at that site and in the company. And the cool thing is that's 1,000 employees over the next couple of years that'll be employed at that site. Or, well, not the next couple of years, but as soon as the facility is built. As the liaison from the Kentlands Community Foundation to the City Council, I can just describe one of the big issues that we discussed last week was the plans for the Kentlands Lakelands 5K. It's still kind of up in the air, and in a way it depends on what the city decides to do with a couple events in the fall and into the summer, whether this will be the resumption of the usual 5K or whether it'll be another virtual event. We hope that people will participate either way and that sponsors will support the event. It's a great event, supports a number of nonprofits in addition to providing a great exercise and celebration for anybody that's involved in the 5K. So, and that leads me to my last remark, which I've been talking about for quite a long time. And that is about the current pandemic and the circumstances we face. So I was able to get my second vaccination last week. So in another week or so, I should be in pretty good shape. Clearly, a lot of people are feeling the same way, perhaps a little bit prematurely, because as you spend time in various retail areas or shopping areas doing curbside pickup or perhaps even venturing out, you'll see that a lot of people feel relatively safe, so safe that they're not wearing their masks. So first thing I want to do is remind everybody in the city of Gaithersburg and in the county that you should get your shot, get the shot. Every person over 16 years of age in the county is now eligible for a COVID vaccination. There are 3 vaccines, or there will be 3 vaccines soon as Johnson & Johnson vaccine is reinstated. That's a one-shot vaccination. The other 2 are Pfizer and Moderna. Those are both 2-shot vaccinations. So in the meantime, even if you've gotten the vaccination, you should still practice good masking behavior. Mask up if you when you go out into the public. We're not through this yet. We have to, you know, Montgomery County is still a high-risk area. So I read a scientific paper this morning that was shared among my colleagues at NIH that the evidence for airborne transmission and the effectiveness of masks is becoming more of a fact rather than conjecture. So wear the mask, wash your hands, avoid crowds, keep your social distance. If you're indoors, definitely wear the mask and keep your distance. If you're outdoors, wear the mask and keep your social distance. So we're going to get through this, but we're not at the finish line yet. So you have to maintain that behavior. That's about all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I will take Lori Ann's cue and I will talk about the book festival coming up. It starts 1 week from Saturday with a full month of programming, basically 1 or 2 programs per day. The first 2 weeks are going to be the grown-ups books, and the second 2 weeks are going to be the children's and teen young adult books. We have a spectacular lineup of authors and moderators and conversations. We've recorded a number of them already in advance. They will just be premiering on the premiere dates, and I've had a chance to introduce a couple of them and hear the programs. They are, as I said, spectacular. You want to see this. You don't want to miss this. It is Gaithersburg Book Festival has something for whatever taste you have, whatever age you are, whatever sort of issues or stories you like to read. Chances are there's something more than one thing for you. Find out about everything having to do with the book festival at gaithersburgbookfestival.org. The programs will be initially running on our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, I should say, which you can link to through our website, or you can just go to YouTube and search Gaithersburg Book Festival and subscribe to the channel. We will also, we're planning to run the videos on Facebook after they've premiered on YouTube, so they'll be there as well. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and there's just plenty of information out there, and all the programming's free, and it's going to be amazing. So I'm going to leave it at that. I will note again, we mentioned that next week we're actually going to do 2 work sessions, one on Monday night, one on Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. To discuss and take deep dives on the budget. We will have public comment, but what we'll probably do is allow public comment up front and before these presentations, just because we really get into the weeds in these work sessions. The next regular meeting of the mayor and city council will be on Monday, May 3rd. And with that, I'll go from the city manager, Tanisha.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be brief, and Dennis Inslinger is going to join. This is the second meeting of the month, and we try to give a verbal update on our racial equity efforts. Obviously, last month was a really big presentation as we took a deep dive into the framework that was presented for our work for the next 2 years. And as a follow-up to that, we are continuing to evaluate the feasibility of a full-time racial equity coordinator, which is currently in the proposed budget. Looks feasible. We're still fleshing out the details of that position. So we'll be working with HR on that. And the other homework assignment was the resolution that council will ultimately adopt that will express your support for our work along the lines of racial equity. So still working with members of council one-on-one to refine that resolution and bring it back for discussion and hopefully approval. And also just quickly, I am engaged in a free course that the University of South Florida is offering. So I can get closer to Judd. So they're offering a free certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And it's every Wednesday night for about, I don't know, I think it's 8 weeks or so, maybe longer. And just as a confirmation of what I said during the racial equity presentation last month, Even when we think we know, we don't really know. So some of these things I thought I would already know. I definitely failed my first pop quiz, but thankfully they allow you to retake it. So I did. So we just can't take for granted that even when we think we're educated and well-versed on this topic, we really don't know, and it is worthy of our time and study. So just want to bring that up, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dennis for a few of his updates.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I wanted to provide an update on the vendor information data collection that we have been doing. We have about a 60% response rate so far on our active vendors within the city. I will report that we do have a large percentage of small businesses that have identified themselves as such. And we do have representation in each of the categories, such as disabled, veteran, minority-owned, and women-owned businesses. We are hoping to wrap this up by the end of the fiscal year. It is taking a little bit longer given some vacancies within the finance department. We're hoping to complete this data collection by the end of the fiscal year. I also wanted to provide an update on the COG Chief Equity Officers Committee. That committee has been meeting for over a year. That included last year during the cohort, and then became an official committee this coming year. A couple of things that the committee has done recently is we've adopted the regional definition for racial equity used by the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GARE, which is when race can no longer be used to predict the life outcomes and outcomes of all groups are improved. So that's going to be the COG definition of racial equity as we move forward with our regional efforts. In addition, COG has been working on a racial equity training and education RFQ. There is a working group that is currently reviewing those submittals and working with the contracts and purchasing department at COG in order to finalize the candidates for that. Again, that process, we're looking at trying to pre-qualify groups rather than specifically indicating what the fees might be for specific aspects. And then two other components of some regional training that the Equity Officers Committee have been working on is one is with the NLC Race, Equity and Leadership, or REAL program. We are looking to provide some regional seminars for elected officials in the upcoming years. So look forward to more information on that. They're currently putting together some proposals for that. And then GARE is also finalizing the development of the next cohort training. So in the next couple months, we'll be announcing what type of training or cohorts there will be for the next fiscal year. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions or comments, council members? Lori Ann, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you, Tanisha and Dennis, for the updates. You mentioned that you were updating us on the data collected for the procurement. And I was wondering, I know that we collected data previously for our boards, committees, and commissions, and wanted to see if that data was also going to be included in this holistic review of data for the city.
Well, I think as a part of the framework that was outlined for the next couple of years, one of the things we'll be focused on is making sure the trainings and educational opportunities we provide are available, and our boards, commissions, and committee members are encouraged to attend. I did also review the information that was collected several years ago about the racial and gender and I think geographic makeup of the current groups. And much like Dennis said, we have a 60% response rate on the vendor information that finance has been working on for quite a while. There wasn't a really good response rate for that survey that was done several years ago. So that is something that we can take a look at. But I think The data that came out of there showed that we weren't very diverse. I think one of the things we need to focus on is a strategy for recruitment and encouraging others to take a look at opportunities we have available to be involved, and working with staff as well on that side of the equation, which is part of our 2-year program, right? It's the building awareness and also developing skills and tools that we can use to meet our goals.
Okay, thank you for that, Tanisha. Another set of data points I wanted to ask about was the data from the policing department. And I know that we had some changes in this last legislative session, and I was wondering if we're going to be, are those changes with the legislative session going to be impacting any of the activities of the Police Advisory Commission or our police department?
I'm not sure if there's any impact on the Police Advisory Commission. I don't believe there is. As you know, there was a lot of information contained in that bill, and it's actually still under review. It's our general assessment that the vast majority of the changes are current practices of our police department. So we're not expecting a lot of drastic change, but there are a few areas that have been discussed previously that will be a drastic change, but there's still more to be fleshed out there. The state has to create commissions, and there's the issue with the discipline and the county's commission and how they have jurisdiction over our city. And there are lots of issues there that need to be sorted out. So we aren't ready yet with a summary. It is still ongoing, and we're taking a look at all of the changes there and how we're impacted.
Okay, so we'll get an update about any significant changes in the city.
You will, yeah, we just aren't prepared for that right now.
Okay, and then Dennis, I believe you mentioned that there's a second cohort forming for the GARE program.
They're currently deciding how to form the cohorts. So once we have that information, we'll have a better idea of how we might participate in those. They had initially talked about kind of 2 cohorts, kind of initial cohort, which is what we had participated in the past, and then a follow-up cohort for those that have participated previously. So they're still trying to structure those. I think the general consensus was to a large degree to think about waiting until they were in person, but they are looking at strategies to kind of hold some of those virtually. And so we do have a meeting coming up this week, so I might know a little bit more about what GARE has put together for those cohorts.
Okay. Just wanted to see if we were going to be changing the participants for the new cohort.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think we're sure yet how we're going to participate. Again, we heard a lot from our current cohort members that once the program shift from in person to virtual, that there was a significant difference. I think that all organizations have adapted and adjusted, and I'm sure there's still opportunities to provide a robust program, but we don't have enough details. GARE's still trying to sort through, and COG is trying to sort through what they will ultimately structure with GARE, and then we'll make a decision as a city how we might participate going forward.
Okay, all right, those are all the questions. Thank you.
Mike, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I had a question, and I guess this is both for Tanisha and Lynn. This is about our Police Advisory Committee as opposed to a commission. I believe a commission has a different charge than an advisory committee. And maybe, it's my recollection that it is a Police Advisory Committee and not a commission. And I assume that a commission has a quasi judicial role with respect to the council and city manager. So is my impression correct?
Yes, certainly under the current structure of the Police Advisory Committee, I mean, it is a recommending committee to the mayor and council. What has been adopted by the state legislature, there are actually several committees mostly on the county level and also the state level, that will be creating policies and procedures that all police departments will need to adopt, but will also be taking a role in review of complaints against police officers as well as disciplinary matters. So those actually are not advisory to the mayor and council. They have independent jurisdiction. And in some respects, they supersede the authority of the chief of police to impose discipline as well. So a lot of that structure kind of remains to be seen because the legislation creates these committees, but they haven't been formed yet. And then they will have a charge and they will have certain responsibilities. Some of the legislation takes effect in July, this coming July, some in October, and then some not till July of 2022. So, there'll be kind of a lengthy implementation period for all of these changes.
So we don't know yet whether this, so I guess the question is will the municipal government be compelled to put to establish a commission for the police, or will it be an independent commission appointed by the state that will have oversight over police activities in municipal governments, and which our city government then really doesn't have much role in establishing those commissions. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's two anticipated commissions. One would be at the state level, which would be charged with investigating use of force incidents for the police, which again, the city would have no control over. Those investigations would be independent. There is also a separate commission that's done on a county level, which again, we would have no control over, no appointment authority over, no city representation on. That would be making recommendations with regard to disciplinary actions against Gaithersburg police officers.
So municipal government, what are the options for a municipal government in establishing something? I guess it's still a little bit early to say, but I guess the role of the police advisory committee is essentially unchanged, but there's this other commission that either the city is able to establish or not, and to determine the relationship of the county commission to the city, to management of the city police. I guess those are kind of questions that I anticipate you'll have some answers for. I don't know that you're ready to answer those tonight, but I'm just curious because I want to make clear for the public what we have now is not what I think Lorianne was referring to, and we need to make sure that that's understood.
I just want to clarify that Lynn confirmed there at this point there's no mechanism in the state law, the new state law, that would have municipalities create a commission. Right now the commission would be constituted at the county level, and right now there's no mechanism for us to have any say into how the board is created or constituted. They would have authority over our disciplinary issues. That's the way the law reads out, right?
Yeah, that is correct. I anticipate our police advisory commission, could still have some function once these other commissions are created, because they do things like recommendations when we implement new speed camera locations. They also, make other recommendations on areas of policing that are, outside of, discipline and use of force issues. So, there still may be a role for our local commission or committee to make recommendations, but then there will be both the state and county commission that will have clear duties and responsibilities on creating other standards and addressing investigations of excessive use of force and disciplinary actions.
But as Tanisha said to begin with, we're sorting all that out, and it will be brought to us. So I don't want to get too far off track, anticipating a conversation where we're going to have anyway later when we have more information.
Well, I just, one of the things I wanted to distinguish is, we do have commissions in the city. We have several, but we don't, but the police advisory role is not a commission. They're an advisory committee to the mayor and council. They don't have another role, a quasi judicial role like the planning commission, landlord and tenant affairs commission, whatever, whatever the other commissions are. It's quite distinct from the advisory committee that we have.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much for that update, Dennis. Appreciate it. Tanisha, we'll know you're getting closer to me when you start rooting for the Miami Hurricanes. Next, we have economic development update. Tech team, if you could bring up Tom Lonergan, please. I'm assuming Tom's still with us. Yes, he is.
That seemed to take a long time, Mr. Mayor. Hope you can hear me.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You got it. Good evening. While we routinely highlight the enterprise zone and toolbox programs that provide significant incentives for capital investment here in the city, I did just want to quickly highlight another somewhat less illuminated designation that continues to support and attract small businesses to the east side of our city. The historically underutilized business zone or Hubzone program is regulated and implemented by the SBA, and it's designed to help small businesses gain preferential access to federal procurement opportunities. The decision by SBA on where to designate these zones isn't arbitrary. It's based on the socioeconomic data of the area of a city. To qualify under this program, a census tract must either demonstrate a poverty rate of at least 25%, or half or more of its householders must have incomes below 60% of the area median income. Gaithersburg currently has 3 qualifying census tracts, which roughly cover the area around Lake Forest Mall, Perry Parkway, and in Old Town east of Summit Avenue. The program's benefits for Hubzone certified companies include competitive and sole source contracting, price evaluation preference in full and open contract competitions, as well as subcontracting opportunities. To qualify for Hubzone certification through the SBA, it must be a small business as defined by the SBA, be at least 51% owned and controlled by US citizens, have 35% of its employees living within a Hubzone, and have its principal office located in the Hubzone. It's worth noting that while the program doesn't necessarily receive as much press as some of the larger incentives, many small businesses in search of federal contracting opportunities are acutely aware of the Hubzone program. In past years, our office has sponsored in-person seminars with the SBA to assist small businesses that might be interested in becoming a certified Hubzone business. And even this year alone, our office has fielded multiple inquiries from businesses and brokers in search of space within a designated Hubzone. The SBA last updated its Hubzone map in 2017, with the next update coming in 2022, as the maps are now updated every 5 years. Designations remain in place until December of this year, and data from the 2020 census will be used to determine eligibility of census tracts for the next 5-year cycle. We will continue to promote the Hubzone program, albeit virtually for now, and will track its future in Gaithersburg as the SBA evaluates our census tracts in the coming months. Secondly, and finally, I just wanted to mention that the Maryland Department of Labor is reporting that Gaithersburg's unemployment rate for February, the most recent month for which data is available, stood at 6.6%, which is down significantly from the 10% rate we recorded back in May of last year, but still higher than the countywide average of 5.7. Looking at the 2020 profile of our civilian labor force, the relatively higher unemployment rate isn't entirely surprising, given current circumstances. Of our total labor force of just under 38,000, meaning those 16 and up and employed here in the city, about 2,650 of them work in retail trades, nearly 2,200 work in hotel and food services, and over 400 are employed in the arts, entertainment, and recreation fields, which are, of course, 3 sectors of the economy that have been acutely affected by pandemic-related shutdowns. As these and other impacted industries slowly return to regular operations, we do expect our unemployment rate will decline accordingly. That's all I've got for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. Next item on our agenda, we're going to move into policy discussions and talk about a resolution adopting regulations for the upcoming election. Lynn Board, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor said before you this evening is a resolution approving some amendments to the city's election regulations. These amendments are mostly ministerial in nature, but they do reflect changes in the provisions dealing with city festivals and events and candidate debates and forums to recognize that we've gone to virtual events and to address how those would be handled during the pandemic and the election. We've also updated the finance section to have a new process for obtaining accounts for access to submit campaign finance reports, deleted the provisions that were pertaining to writing candidates since we amended the charter to no longer allow writing candidates. We've clarified the rights of poll watchers on both early voting and election day activities. And then we've also updated the document to remove references to absentee ballots and to reference the mail-in ballot process that we're planning on using for the 2021 election cycle. All of these regulations were recommended by the Board of Supervisors of Elections. And I'd also like to thank Lauren Klingler for all of her work on this process. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I will echo your thanks to Lauren Klingler, and I will open it up for questions, comments. It is policy discussion. If someone wants to, anybody wants to jump in on why they're going to vote for this or against it, or if someone just wants to move the resolution. What is the pleasure of the council? Lori Ann Sales.
Mayor, I'd like to move the approval.
Okay, Rob Wu.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And I'm not seeing any other hands go up, so I'll call the roll. All in favor say aye, any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Just got a alert on my computer saying, do I want to restart now? No, I do not. Lynn and Lauren, thank you very much. And then Lynn, we have from the city attorney, is there anything else from you?
I guess related to the election regulations that you all just approved, they will be part of the candidate packets and those will be available on May 6th. So coming up very soon. And that's
Excellent.
it.
Excellent. And I already got a note from Dennis that there's nothing additional from him. And so I will remind everybody that next week we have actually 2 work sessions, both on the budget, one on Monday night, one on Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. You can view just the same way however you're viewing this, you can view those. And the next regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council will be on Monday, May 3rd. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.